tonight's meeting will end at 6:45. I will help preside over this meeting until the chair is selected, which is our first item of business, at which case the new chair may choose to preside over the balance of the meeting, or I may continue. As a matter of housekeeping, let's go over a little bit as to the virtual meeting format and how other members of the community may participate. Before you on the screen is our agenda. Because of our virtual remote setting, there's a number of ways that members of the public can participate. So that's available on your screen. And this agenda package was also published online as well. Before you is the agenda and the format as to what we're going to go through tonight. First order of business to call this meeting to order. So I would like to call this meeting to order. And then Jade Hall, may I ask that you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? And I invite others to join us. And you'll need to unmute. Oh, Jade is not unmuted.
Is the person on, Lauren? I don't.
She is on. Oh, there we go, Jade. There you go.
All right.
Here we go, Jade.
All right. Let's see if I remember. And that was so long.
I'll help.
I pledge
Allegiance
allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Liberty and justice for all. Yes. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much. Next on this agenda is the roll call. So we'll ask Roseanne to do the roll call of all members and alternates, please.
Hi. Do we have Daniel Sullivan present?
Yeah. Yes.
Awesome. Harsh Patel?
Yes.
Joyita Ghosh? Not present currently. Neil Osborne?
Here in this corner.
Hello. Nicholas Dold?
Present.
Siok Hall? But that's also known as her name, Jade. And she was on. Tanmay Patel?
Yes, I'm here.
Awesome. So those are our 7 main. And then our 2 alternates are Ranjith Kumar. Not present. And Danwat Daliwat.
Present.
Okay. And I see that Joyita Ghosh just signed on. Is that correct? Maybe she's still connecting.
If I may ask that we bring down the agenda, then we could see all the faces, and Roseanne may have an easier time of seeing those that are present. Thank you.
Yes, I definitely see Joyita and see that she's still connecting to audio. All right, looks like we have a full house.
Congratulations, everyone, for being appointed to this really important committee and kicking off our first meeting with 100% attendance. So thank you so much. I know we've gone back and forth with a number of emails. The next item of business is seating of the alternates. I had to learn this myself. How it works here is if there is any member, the standing members of a committee not present, one or more of the alternates would step into the meeting for tonight. Given that they're all present, alternates can continue to participate, but such alternates would just not vote on the item of business. Right, so you could comment and give your remarks, but when we take a motion and ask for a second of the motion and do a roll call vote, you would not participate in that role. Okay, so The next item of business is seating of the alternates. At this point, we would have 0, not applicable tonight because everyone was able to attend. Any questions there as to members versus alternates? Pretty straightforward. Okay, great. So approval of the minutes. Throughout this process, we have to follow the Brown Act. So each item on the agenda, because we're voting virtually, will need to be voted on verbally. We will ask for a motion. Someone from the committee member would need to say, you move to motion for something, and you'll ask for a second. Then Roseanne will do a round robin of all 7 members or alternates to cast your vote on any item. Okay, so that's how it'll work. And then when we get to items of business, I'll explain to you how that works a little further, but I just wanted to make sure we understood the voting process. So the next item of business is approval of the agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda as drafted by staff? If I could get a volunteer for someone to make that motion. Neil, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Great. Roseanne, can you please go around and do a roll call vote? You're on mute.
Daniel?
Here. Yes.
Yes. All right. Awesome. Harsh?
Yep, yes.
Goita?
Joyita, yeah, present.
Oh, sorry. Joyita. Neil?
Yes.
Nicholas?
Yes.
Jade? Is it okay if Jade gives a thumbs up? Okay. And Tanmay?
Yes.
Awesome.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, everyone. The next item on the agenda is public comments, also known as public forum. At this point in the agenda, we allowed members of the public to make comments, limiting it to 3 minutes on items that are not on the agenda. So at this point, I'll ask Roseanne to take a few seconds to see if we have members of the public who are participating and if there's anyone who wishes to make comments at this point.
Currently, there are no participants from the public.
Okay, great. So we'll close the public forum at this point and turn the floor back to the committee. As you'll see on the agenda, Mike, if I may get IT or Rochelle to put up the agenda and we can go to the item of business. Wonderful. So what we'll do tonight, we're going to cover 4 areas: selection of the chair, to receive the bylaws and responsibilities, review and confirm the revenues and services are consistent with Measure F, and review and hopefully approve the proposed quarterly meeting dates going forward. Okay, so first item of business is A. We're going to select the chair and vice chair. So I'm going to explain to you a little bit about that role for those who may have not had a chance to review the agenda report. The bylaws of this committee that governs a lot of the structures, the duties, and the responsibility calls for this committee to have 1 chair and vice chair set at the first meeting of the calendar year. So given that this is our first meeting, we'll do it now. And it will be nominated amongst yourselves. That chair will preside over the meetings and help us set the agenda. So you would basically preside over the meeting just like I'm doing right now. And so what we'll do is this evening, Roseanne will call each individual. We'll ask you to nominate a chair and a vice chair. And at the end, Roseanne will tabulate. The individual with the most votes for chair and most votes for vice chair will hold those appointed positions. How we do business in terms of running these meetings publicly is as follows. Staff does a presentation. Committee maybe has some quick questions to clarify. We turn it over to the public, and then it comes back to the committee floor for action. So staff just made a presentation. At this point, I'll ask the committee if you have any questions before we turn it over to the public. Any questions from the committee about this action to nominate the chair and vice chair?
I do have a quick question.
Okay.
I have no idea if my fellow committee members want to be chair or vice chair. If any of them want to be, maybe you raise your hand or something and give the rest of us an indication. Otherwise, I'm picking two of you out at random because I've never met any of you. So I, for one, don't want to be chair or vice chair. I will if no one else will, but I don't want to be. If any of you want to be, that would be helpful information.
Great. Anybody would like to comment further before we turn it over to members of the public? Any comments or questions, either through the staff presentation or Daniel's insightful comments?
Do we have time to have people introduce themselves or so that we get to know who everyone is?
Unfortunately, tonight our meeting ends at 6:45. With virtual meetings, we can only stream one meeting. So I think you're the one that brought to our attention we have a meeting conflict. So we have to end this meeting at 6:45. Our most pressing item is item business C. At this point, limited time.
Lauren, just
Yes.
because it seems like not many people are familiar with each other, maybe just one or two sentences from
Okay.
everybody as to why they're, their background and why they're on this committee would be helpful.
Okay, so we'll do a round robin real quick, and then we can turn it over to the public. So go ahead, Roseanne.
First up, we have Daniel. Can you say a couple of
Sure.
nice things about
So
yourself?
I lived in Milpitas for 20 years. I've got 2 kids. I'm one of the Boy Scout leaders of Troop 164. I'm a scientist. I have a health issue, which means I can't run around and do lots of stuff. I can do a little bit of stuff, which is why I don't think I should be chair or vice chair. I don't think I could go to the physical meetings and do some of the stuff that might require traveling around as much. Thanks.
Thank you. Up next, we have Harsh.
Yeah, it's Harsh Patel, living in the Milpitas city since last 2.5 years. I have a daughter, and my profession is I'm a sales associate director for a technology consulting firm, and closely associated with the city of Milpitas since 2015 through BAPS, Swaminarayan Mandir, that's based here in Milpitas.
Thank you. Joyita.
I'm an artist, a silk painting artist, and I'm also a teacher at Cal Hills High School. And I have lived in the city for 20 years. I have 2 children, and also part of the Milpitas Art Commission. Thank you.
Next, we have Neil.
I've lived in Milpitas for a little over 20 years. I was active in Scouts and still am at the council level. I was also active with the Milpitas Band Boosters with my children going through school here in Milpitas. Professionally, I work in the technology patent field, and I'm here because I want to see Milpitas govern itself effectively.
Thank you. Next up, we have Nicholas.
Hi, my name is Nicholas. I am an adjunct professor in the College of Arts and Sciences at Santa Clara University. I've only lived in Milpitas for going on 4 years. I live here with my partner and my 2 cats, and that's it.
Thank you. Jade. Jade, believe
Hi,
you're
Jade.
on mute still.
Mute. Okay. I read the Milpitas for 41 years. I was quite involved with the Milpitas city officials, so I worked with some of them, and in the aerospace business, and I was with the telecommunication committee for when there was such a early days in the beginning. But I have retired for some years now, and I have not been involved very much in I used to be involved league and all that, the kids, but not anymore. So I would like to be active again in our community. And I thought, what better place to start than here after Oversight Committee. Just want to make sure that the money that we collect is used for a purpose, and that's get taken away for other project. That was really why I wanted to join. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to serve.
Okay. Thank you so much. And last we have Tanmay.
Hi, my name is Tanmay Patel. I've been living in Milpitas since 10 years, and this is my first time joining Milpitas City, and I'm excited to be part of the team. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right, Lauren, that is the rundown of our 7 main members.
Great. Out of respect for the alternates, since this great idea only took a few minutes, while they won't be voted into chair and vice chair, I'd like to give them an opportunity to say hello and meet the committee. So if you can also give the alternates a chance to say hello.
Sure. First up, we have Ranjith Kumar.
Hello, I'm Ranjit. So I'm in IT profession, and recently I started my own business. I have been in Milpitas for past 10 years, and this is the first time. So I'm seeing how I can how I can give back little to city. I'll try my best.
Awesome. Thank you, Ranjit. And next up, we have Danwant Daliwal.
Hi, my name is Danwant Daliwa. I'm living in Milpitas since 1984, almost 39 years. And I have 3 kids, 2 daughters, 1 son. They are in a professional field. One is attorney, the other IT, and my son is a financial analyst. So I love Milpitas since 1984. I live here. I'm retired from U.S. Postal Service. Before I work in Seagate Recording Media 20 years as a manager manufacturing. So I love Milpitas. So I enjoy, I'm retired still, I want to keep busy myself. Thank you very much. I appreciate I meet you guys.
Thank you. Thank you, Joyita, for that recommendation, and Assistant City Manager for chiming in. So that gave us a lot of value. At this point, if there are no other questions, we'll take a minute to see if members of the public have any comments before we turn the floor back to the committee. Roseanne, are there any members of the public?
There are no members of the public present.
Okay, we're going to turn it back to the committee floor. And so at this point, we're going to go around, and Roseanne will call your name if you can nominate a chair and a vice chair. This could also include yourself. If you are passionate about being chair and vice chair, it doesn't preclude you from nominating yourself. And then she'll tabulate towards the end. So Roseanne, please help.
Awesome. First up, Daniel Sullivan, can you please cast your vote for chair?
So raise your hand if you don't want me to say your name. Otherwise, I'm picking at random. So I'll put Harsh Patel for chair and Nicholas Dold for vice chair.
All right, thank you. Next up, we have Harsh Patel. Can you please cast your vote for chair and vice chair?
For chair, I would vote Joyita, and vice chair Neil.
Thank you, Harsh. Joyita, can you please cast your vote for chair and vice chair? Oh, Joyita, you are still.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Okay.
I would like to vote for Nicholas Dolt for chair and Harsh Patel for vice chair.
Thank you. Next up, we have Neil. Can you please cast your vote for chair and vice chair? Neil? Hi, can you please cast your vote for chair and vice chair?
Yeah, all I have to do is make the window active so that I can unmute. I will vote Harsh for vice chair and Tanmay for chair.
Thank you. Next up, we have Nicholas. Can you please cast your vote for chair and vice chair?
I would like to vote for Joyita for chair and Tanmay as vice chair.
Thank you. Jade, can you please cast your vote for chair and vice chair? Oh, there you go. Oh.
Going on. Sorry.
Oh, you're on mute again.
Can the Zoom host mute and unmute Jade?
It's unmuted now.
I'm unmute.
Yes, you're unmuted. Go ahead. Oh.
Miss Hall, I think you're using two devices. If you can concentrate on one device to unmute yourself, because we can ask you to unmute, but you have to do it on your side.
All right. It keeps. Yeah.
Maybe she can chat.
Jade, would you like to use the chat at the bottom to cast your vote? It's right at the bottom panel, participants, and then chat.
And
then while Jade does that, is there a way we can control the mute and unmute on our end as administrators?
Oh, here's an option. She can write in a piece of paper and show it to us.
Yes, that's good too. If you have a notepad and a pen.
Yeah.
Great idea. Very resourceful. So Roseanne, you have to unmute yourself.
Hi. Chair Neil and Vice Chair Nick. Is that correct? All right, awesome. Thank you. And then we have Tanmay. Can you please cast your vote for chair and vice chair?
Sure. I would like to vote Neil for chair and Hirsch for vice chair. Thank you.
Okay. It looks like we have a tie for chair. Joyita and Neil both have two votes casted for them. So what we're going to do is go around again one by one, and please cast a new vote between between Joyita and Neil.
Are you starting with me again?
We're going to start with Daniel.
So we don't do down ballot stuff. We're not that sophisticated yet. So I'll vote for Neil.
Neil. Okay. Harsh.
Joyita?
Thank you. Joyita.
I'll vote for Neil.
Neil.
Joyita.
Nicholas.
I'll vote again for Joyita for chair.
Jade. Neil. And Tanmay.
Neil.
All right, well, 1, 2, 3. Neil, looks like Neil is has been voted for chair, and for vice chair, we have 3 votes for Harsh Patel.
Congratulations. Thank you so much, everyone. And thank you, Roseanne, for doing that. So congratulations for chair and vice chair. So at this point, Mr. Chair, I can turn over the remainder of the meeting to you, or you could have me preside over the remainder of this meeting and you can start at the next meeting. What is your pleasure?
Oh, let's start at the next meeting.
Great. Super. Happy to help. All right, everybody. We got through a very, very important task. The next one here is just to make sure we did a little bit of our homework as new committee members. The next item is business, is our committee's bylaws and responsibilities. So that was attached in the agenda packet. Wanted to make sure you understood. Mostly, there's 2 things that I think that stand out to me is that it calls for this being an advisory committee to the council relative to the city's finances for Measure F, and that we meet quarterly. So those are a couple of areas we'll touch upon tonight. In the agenda packet, you'll see that there's 3 areas in particular, and we also framed it around our quarterly meeting dates as well. So this committee is focused on advising the council as it pertains to the development of the budget, reviewing the projected revenues and recommended services and expenditures as it relates to Measure F. It's really important. This relates to Measure F. Also, to annually look at where we close the year financially and review the status of those programs that were wholly funded by Measure F, those services funded by Measure F. And last but not least, receive the sales tax information, the presentation by our sales tax consultant on our sales tax base and Measure F and how it's generated and the diversity that we have. And then receive a presentation from our independent finance auditor, or it could be extended through me from them. So in the agenda report, you'll see it's framed in 4 quarterly meetings. So at each of those quarterly meetings, we thought those could be the primary items of business, partly because that's kind of how our fiscal year evolves as well. So at certain times of the year, we do the budget. At certain times of the year, we'll close the books and then also audit the financial statements. So I wanted to turn it back to the chair to see if you have any other comments on this item before we ask the committee if they have any questions.
So I note that the staff has proposed or recommended adjusting the months. I presume that the adjustment better aligns with the city's budgeting process. Is
Correct. It's the budgeting process and also when the financial statements would be ready. So because one of the deliverables is to present to you our fiscal year end and present to you, the committee, our independent financial report, we wanted to move the meeting date so that way when we hold the regular meetings, information is available. Any other questions?
That's all I have on this item. Does anyone else have any comments, questions, concerns?
I wanted to ask you something. What is the purpose of this committee? Apart from oversight, can we also give any ideas of how better we can use the money for the city?
If we look at the bylaws, it specifically talks about the development of the budget, reviewing the projected revenues and recommendations of expenditures. So staff will be making the proposal to this committee, and this committee is empowered to comment and provide feedback, which we would relay to the council.
So yes, we can make suggestions, it sounds like, right?
Yes. Any other questions before we turn it to the public for any questions or comments from them?
Yes. So when is the timeline to receive all those financial documents?
Great question. So in the agenda report there's a table. It's got 4 rows. One column is called action and one column is called annual schedule for consideration. If we hold 4 meetings based on the proposed dates, that's when we'll publish each of those information. So tonight, April, we'll present to you in the next item of business, the projected revenue and services to be funded by Measure F, and then so forth, August, October, and January.
Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions?
If we have any suggestions, do we have to come up with actual factual numbers for the city to look at, or it can just be a suggestion or idea that we are bringing forth into this meeting?
I think I'll leave that to the committee. The committee can probably develop how it wants to deliberate and what it wants to bring forward to the council. So I think at this point, I don't have a specific response to that. It may evolve. So.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Seeing no other questions, I think at this point, Roseanne, we'll see if there's a member of the public who have any questions on this item.
There is one member of the public by the name of Urvish Kumar Mehta. Think they are on mute.
Thank you very much. Being the Measure F committee for the city of Milpitas, what I wanted to bring it to the committee is that the purpose of the monitoring for the special municipal tax revenues that has been established for the city of Milpitas, and I also wanted to mention that how often the special municipal tax, that has been introduced as a part of a Measure F. On what base? I request that on quarterly basis, there should be a way to provide a financial report to the public and also release those reports to the public that where the Measure F's tax revenue is being utilized, and as well as provide the insight on what are the enhancement that is being made to the various projects. For example, youth, senior programs, where the funds are being contributed towards, and as well as provide the adequate level of services, where the tax money is being utilized, because City of Milpitas is with the Measure F Oversight Committee and the funds that has been required to be allotted. City of Milpitas is one of those cities within the Bay Areas where out of nine sister cities, City of Milpitas is one of the cities increasing the taxes, service tax revenue above the average threshold. So it is important that for the citizens to know that where the funds are being utilized and how the funds are being managed, and what are the quarterly reports that is being initiated for the funds that are being collected, and versus the funds are being spent. Also, it is important to know that the projects which is being where the fundings are being utilized towards, there are specific title codes they are required to be allotted as a part of oversight committee allocations. So I wanted to mention that to the commission as well. So thank you very much.
Great, thank you so much. Roseanne, are there any other members of the public waiting to make comments?
There are no other members waiting to make comments.
Okay, great. Chair, I just turn it back to you. Did you want to respond to that comment? Otherwise, at this point, committee is asked to receive this agenda report, which is to inform the committee about the bylaws and the responsibilities.
I have no comment on the comment. Does anyone else?
So I just had one comment. Are we going to get a financial one-page statement that says funds were spent on these projects? Is that what we're going to wind up with?
In the next agenda report, we summarize the service areas, the city service areas, not down to the program specific. And I'll explain to you why. The reason is that this is a general tax. It's not specific to any use. So I want to make that kind of clear in framing, but we do want to delineate where we are able to maintain and preserve services. So I'll go into that a little more certainly in the next item of business. And quarterly, staff also presents financial statements which are reported to the council. One will be forthcoming in our next meeting in May. And so the Measure F revenue will be delineated there as well. Any other comments? Seeing none at this point, Roseanne, I'll ask that we record a motion. Do we have someone who will make the first motion to accept this report?
I motion we accept the report.
Great. Second, please.
Yep.
Wonderful. Because it's remote meeting, Roseanne, you'll need to do a roll call, please.
Awesome. The person who seconded, was that Harsh?
Yes.
Harsh, yeah.
Okay, thank you. That was, sorry, it was very quick. So I'm just going to go around again. Please cast your vote for yay or nay. Daniel?
Yay.
Harsh?
Yeah.
Joyita?
Yay.
Neil?
Yay.
Nicholas?
Yay.
Jade? Yeah, thumbs up for yay. Tanmay?
Yay.
Thank you. All votes have been casted.
Fantastic. All right. We'll go next to the next item of business, which is really kind of the primary goal of tonight, which is to review our first report on the Measure F revenue and expenditures. If I may get help to advance the slides, I'd appreciate that. Great. So I've prepared a brief presentation just to kind of guide us through the Measure F. So this report and what your action is to receive the projected revenue and that it that the confirmed services that we're recommending to be funded is consistent with Measure F. Next slide, please. In the next few slides, we'll go over Measure F, just a brief overview, talk about the committee's roles and responsibility real briefly again, look at fiscal 21, because we will receive 1 quarter of revenue, and look at 22 in the proposed year, which begins July 1. We'll conclude by asking that council vote to receive this and to confirm the services provided are consistent with Measure F, and ask if you have any questions or have discussions on the matter. Next slide, please. Measure F. So this went to the voters on November of 2020 in response to the economic and health pandemic. The voters here in Milpitas overwhelmingly approved it by 60.4%. It only needed a simple majority to approve. It's a 1/4 cent sales tax. It has a 8-year sunset, and it took effect April 1, 2021, and it automatically expires March 31, 2029. Based on current estimates, we estimate that Measure F will generate $6.5 million a year, so $6.5 million of general fund revenue. A very important note here about Measure F, it's governed by the revenue section code called Transaction and Use Tax in the state of California's revenue code. Importantly in that section is that 100% of this revenue comes to the city. There is no sharing with the state or the county or any special districts. All those agencies render important responsibilities, but when it comes to Measure F, 100% of it will come here. And if you've been following our budget discussion, you know that the statewide tax, the sales tax, 84% of that sales tax goes to state, county, and special districts. So the effectiveness of Measure F coming back to the city is really powerful. And I think this committee will hopefully understand that concept. Taxes can be special, meaning they're restricted for identified use by the voters, or they can be general, in which case they would go into the general fund and then govern and appropriate it with the guidance of the public and the council. In this case, voters here in the city of Milpitas approve this as a general tax. So it will go into the general fund, and this oversight committee will help us understand the appropriation and services maintained. The primary purpose of the tax measure during this pandemic is twofold. One is financial stability, right? The whole world in Milpitas had a financial crisis as a response to the COVID pandemic. So we want to stabilize the city's finances and also to maintain city services. Some good internal measures and external measures for this Measure F that was called out and important to the voters is the annual fiscal audit and an oversight committee, which is yourself. So I think those are important points to make about Measure F. Next slide, please. I also think it's very important. I've had the pleasure of working with communities on various tax measures. I think it's very important for us to always read the tax question, because this is what we put before the voters and what we voted upon. So I want us to take our time as a committee to read this. And so it was the City of Milpitas Public Services Measure. And the purpose is to provide funding to maintain the city's finances and services, including police and fire protection, 911 emergency response, and natural disaster preparation, youth, senior, and recreation services, repairing parks, equipment, and maintaining parks and recreation service centers, and attracting and retaining local businesses. Shall the measure establishing a 1/4-cent sales tax, providing approximately $6.5 million annually for 8 years, requiring independent audits, citizen oversight committees, all funds spent locally, be adopted. So I wanted us to read that together and share that as we launch our oversight committee. Next slide, please. So the duties of this committee is to advise the council on an annual basis in 3 areas. So I put a little arrow by the one that we're going to focus on tonight. Annually, as a part of the development of the budget, review the projected revenues and recommended expenditure for funds generated by Measure F. Annually, after the end of the fiscal year, review the status of programs and services funded wholly or partly with proceeds from Measure F. Receive annual presentation from the city's sales and use tax consultant and the city's independent financial auditors. So tonight we're going to focus on the development of the budget and use of Measure F. Next slide, please. So this slide shows a snapshot of our projected Measure F revenue. Measure F began on April 1, so we'll have 1 quarter of revenue. Our consultants on the sales tax estimate that our revenue for the current fiscal year will be $1.3 million. For those that are new to City of Milpitas government, the fiscal year begins on July 1 and ends on June 30th. So this revenue is for the period of April 1 through June 30th. Beginning the new fiscal year, which is July 1, 2021, for the 12-month period, we estimate revenue will be $6.3 million for this next year. You may wonder why it's 6.3 million versus 6.5. I wondered. And the reason is because we're still recovering from the pandemic. Our sales tax revenue is still softer than we experienced pre-pandemic. So the 6.3 million is what we estimate for the next year, and we hope for that to continue to recover. Measure F is really critical. It's very important, it's very timely, and the next bullet point also indicates that it's financially relevant. Measure F at $6.3 million will bring in $5.7 million, 5.7% of the general fund budget. The proposed budget is 110.7 million. So this Measure F revenue represents 5.7% towards funding our city services. So it's really timely and it's really important to the bottom line. Next slide, please. One of your duties is also to receive and understand where we have proposed maintaining services. Of the $6.3 million, these are the service areas that we were able to maintain. In the budget development process before the November election, we needed to look at areas that might be reduced as a part of rebalancing the budget because of our deficit. These are the areas and others that we were able to maintain thanks to the Measure F revenues. Our response to 911 calls, being able to resolve crime and dedicating staff to safety and practicing community-oriented policing. So in the police area, $1.6 million. Fire station staffing to ensure acceptable service level for coverage across the city in fire, $1.5 million. Our recreation and cultural services for aquatic, senior, and youth, $400,000. And public works services for trees, parks, and facility, $900,000. What's also important is we have support staff, internal functions to effectively support the other departments, finance, human resources, and technology of $900,000. Next slide, please. Other service areas we were able to maintain: economic development, support for local business and their economic recovery, retaining existing businesses and attracting new businesses of $150,000, building safety and housing, neighborhood preservation and code enforcement of $150,000. Planning, long-range planning and special projects in the amount of $400,000. And last but not least, providing additional hours of library services of $300,000. So that totals service funding of $6.3 million of Measure F revenue. Next slide, please. At this point, it concludes staff's presentation. We ask that you ask us any questions you might have. At the end of this, you receive and confirm services funded are consistent with Measure F. Thank you, Rochelle. I'll turn it back to Chair Neal.
Can we get the text of Measure F back up as a slide to guide our discussion?
Rochelle or Mike, if you could put that slide up, please. Thank you.
There we go. So as I look at the services list, the first item, respond to 911 calls, etc., the police department, to me, that clearly seems to be included in this statement, including police and fire protection. The next item is fire, and specifically fire protection, ensure coverage across the city. That seems quite consistent. Similarly, the line item, summary line item, services for aquatic, senior, and youth services. We have youth, senior, and recreation services, so it's almost the same language. That's fine. Services for parks and trees and facility management. Again, that seems quite consistent. The next item, internal functions to effectively support other city departments. I will say right now, I do not find that item covered by the text of Measure F. So I'd like to go through this whole list and before we open up the discussion, rather than do it with each individual one. So So I have some concern about internal functions to effectively support other city departments. The next one is support local businesses in their economic recovery. Again, that seems quite on point with attracting and retaining local businesses. The next item is neighborhood preservation and code enforcement. This one's a little shaky in my view. You can sort of think of this a little bit maybe as recreation services or repairing park equipment and maintaining parks. But I have a little concern with that. And then the next item, long-range planning and special projects. Don't see it in Measure F. Finally, library hours. It's not specifically in Measure F, but I can find that in, under recreation services, as well as attracting businesses. So that's my quick take on the description of services. At this point, I will open the floor to the other members for your comments.
Chair, may I clarify one point real quick?
Sure.
I should note, as I mentioned previously, it's a general tax. So the ballot question is not limited to the listed item. Importantly, in that sense, by law, it's a general tax governed and appropriated by the council. So I just want to make that clarification.
Yes, I understand it's a general tax. I'm also quite aware of the direction and the actual ballot language. The governing authorities can do what they want, but I think part of this oversight committee should be, our guidance to them should be, are you really spending the money as this measure was put forth? Okay. I will open the floor for other comments.
I can go next. So my question, thanks a lot for this presentation, Lauren and team. I guess it was really good. My question is more on the funds and the contingencies behind it. So for example, what I didn't see, and again, this is my first time. So what's the plan B? I mean, I know we are all looking at an forecast or an estimate that's going to come in. What happens if it doesn't come in?
So you mean if we did 5 million instead of 6.3?
Yeah, exactly. So what's my plan B? Because once my understanding is, and unless city operates differently, once this is approved, I guess it will be repurposed for spending on a monthly basis. And if we don't get the revenue or the Measure F collection as per the plan, what happens? And the next question is kind of related to it. Fire was, this is just a recommendation, right? Fire is something that's unanticipated, and I was just thinking that is there a criteria or a specific category where we can have some reserves so that we don't have to pull through other aspects in case of an emergency? Those are two questions or suggestions that I had.
So can you clarify the reserve point, please?
Yeah. So for example, for fire on the slide that was being shown, we are projecting 1.5 million that will be spent, or maybe 1.6 over the period of 12 months, starting in June. So my question was, can we set aside some funds from all the categories? I don't know if it's applicable, but that can be used in an emergency situation in future from Measure F.
Okay, so let's answer the first question. I believe the first question is what happens if we don't actually receive 6.3 million. We monitor revenue monthly and every quarter we present financial reports to the council. Certainly our sales tax will be an important line item, so we will be monitoring this every month. We have a sales tax consultant that helps us calibrate that revenue, not only the statewide one, but the Measure F one. So we monitor this every month and quarterly report it to the city council. As you may have known, if you follow some of the recent council meetings in the last 18 months, we've been going back to council every 2 months or so to calibrate the budget, which we call rebalancing the budget. So we will continue to stay steadfast on looking at these numbers and taking timely action should that arise. As for reserves, I don't know if Assistant City Manager wants to speak to that, or Walter. At this point, we are recommending the actual preservation of services in fiscal 22. We did use our first $1.3 million in fiscal 21 to rebalance the budget in February, which council approved. That's not the recommendation at this point, but we're here to listen to feedback.
And I'll just quickly add to it. So this is obviously part of the larger budget, part of the overall general fund. So as Lauren mentioned, we're closely tracking, balancing. We do have reserves set aside for emergency situations or if revenues don't come in as projected. So that's sort of an ongoing kind of living thing that, document, the budget document that we work with. This is based on our best revenue projections at this point, and we'll adjust as needed next year.
Thank you, Ashwini. Thank you, Lauren. I'm good.
Harsh, are you satisfied that your questions have been answered, addressed?
Yes.
Okay. Are there any other comments?
Yes.
I have a, sorry.
Go ahead,
Thank you.
I have a, Tama, do you want to go?
Go ahead, please.
Okay. So I have a question regarding the Natural Disaster Fund. I did not see that mentioned or no allocation in the actual budget cost. And we've already experienced fire very close last year. And that is something I feel we need to focus a little bit on. And if you could throw some light on why that wasn't in this, or whether this is not something that we are concerned about in the Measure F, but that is something I feel is quite key, not just for fire, but also for if there is another COVID surge or whatever, again, for the second surge, how are we protected in the city? And the second is, I felt support local business in their economic recovery. That amount of money was rather low because we want the city to thrive. We want more money coming into the local businesses, and they should feel confident going forward. So that's one thing. And I wasn't sure what long-range planning and special projects, what falls under that. Thank you. And great presentation, Lauren.
Thank you. Chair, would you like me to respond to these as they come up?
Yes, please.
Great. So I think one point we want to highlight is Measure F is $5.7 million of the budget. So there's still 5.7% of the budget. So there's about 94% of other resources when we look at the big overall picture. So the economic development has its own department and appropriation. This portion is the appropriation from Measure F. So it's a really important division. It's a very important service that we provide. So I just suggest and guide you to last year's adopted budget to kind of see the programs that we have for and business retention and attraction. So I just wanted to highlight that. You also make a good point about the need to have enough resources for natural disaster and other contingencies. As we saw in 2020, it could really set the city back. I'm pleased to report that this proposed budget coming up, we are able to preserve our reserves and not dip into them further, which speaks to your concern. So we will have about over $31 million of reserves in the general fund, plus other amounts for other obligations as well. So we've done some analysis locally within the county, and we're going to share that at a later date, but it also shows that the city's fiscal discipline in reserves is a remarkable number compared to other cities. So stay tuned. We'll publish that in May, on May 11th, when we come and present to the council in a bigger budget setting. I believe those were your two areas. If I missed one, please let me know.
Long-range planning. Lauren.
Oh, long-range planning for planning services. Was your question as in how does it pertain to the Measure F question, or was it that it was important?
What does it entail? What is it? It sounded a bit vague to me. I just wanted to be more clear about it.
So in terms of long-range planning, urban planning is really important. So general plans, specific plans, urban planning, that's what we're referring to is land use and building planning. So that's really critical, especially for the city of Milpitas. So does that help?
And that planning acts as catalyst for economic development.
Right.
We sort of envision the city and then attract, new businesses and growth into the city.
Right. And then I think the other aspects of the city's vision is to create a livable community, a quality of life. So all that long-range planning kind of basically helps us achieve the core values of the city. So it's an important backbone. Absolutely.
I note that we have approximately 15 minutes of life until we turn into pumpkins. I would ask some member of staff to send out a link to last year's budget, which I think will help clarify what monies are being spent in addition to this very narrow slice of the budget that we are advising on. Other comments? I believe Daniel had one.
Yeah, I had one quick question about flood control. I lived in a part of the city that used to have floods, and City of Milpitas did some mitigation, and my insurance went down. That was great. So I'm hoping that the general fund is handling floods if Measure F is not. And then I wanted to come to the number one issue I have with Milpitas at this point, which I consider a natural disaster, which is the homeless situation. Is any Measure F funds going to be associated with the homeless, which I think derives from COVID, which is a natural disaster? That's the number one thing that is most disturbing to me at this moment. Milpitas, along with many other cities, seems to have got 10% of our population living on the street. And I'd really like to see that addressed. And if Measure F can do something there, then I'm very happy with that. And I listen to any comments you have.
Lauren, did you want to go?
I'll respond first real quick, and then I'll defer to you on the homeless services within our CSA area. So just want a great comment on referring to the budget. So in the agenda report, there's 2 hyperlinks there. So I would refer you to that. That's probably the quickest way of getting there. And then as for homeless services, I'll defer to the assistant city manager because I'm sure it's in our portfolio of CSA services.
Yes, thank you, Lauren, and thank you, Daniel, for the question. So yes, it is a area of high priority, and we are putting aside funding from other sources, including our affordable housing. So we have different funds besides the general fund. So part of it is fees that we collect from other market rate housing projects for affordable housing and for homelessness programs. So we are dedicating funding from there, and then also from CDBG. So there's a significant amount of money going from CDBG. We have the next year's allocation coming up shortly in front of council as well as our commission. And so yes, not going from Measure F, but there's a significant amount of funding going to Measure F both this year, and then also you'll see it in the proposed budget.
So but the homelessness is not associated with Measure F then?
No, not at least not this year. But again, it can change year to year. So the portfolio of services can change. But yeah, not this year.
Okay. And the flooding, is that taken care of with general funds, or is Milpitas just basically fixed that?
General funds, also funding from other agencies like Valley Water,
okay,
and grants.
Are you satisfied with the responses, Daniel?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Okay. Who else would like to comment? Question.
I just have one question to understand this estimates regarding fire, police, and neighborhood library. How did we come up with these numbers? Like 130,000 for let's say for the library and 600,000 for 911. How did those numbers come up? Are we leveraging these numbers from the past year?
Yeah, part of it was it is an art because it is, again, not a special tax. So it's all part of the general fund. But part of it was we had already, as we were tracking our revenues and expenditures and facing the sort of economic crisis, we had already started thinking of what services we would be cutting. And then with the passage of Measure F, we were able to sort of maintain those. And so part of it is kind of looking at what were we thinking of cutting and what was the dollar value of that. And we have our Deputy City Manager, Walter Rossman, also our former Finance Director, if you wanted to add anything to that, Walter.
Good evening, Walter Rossman. So as an example, you mentioned the library, $130,000. That's about a fourth of the funding we provide to the Santa Clara County Library at this time, which translates to about 5 to 6 library hours would be reduced for the city. So with Measure F, we're able to maintain the services. We pay an extra 17 hours of library hours per week for the residents, and 55 hours are paid for by the county library system.
Thank you.
Joita, you've tried several times, specifically calling on you.
I don't know whether this is the time to say about it, but I really wanted to speak again about the homeless situation. And what are the plans that are going to be happening for the homeless situation? And if we can have a committee to actually try to help that situation. For instance, no city really does anything about this homelessness. And I was wondering if Milpitas could actually do something different and solve this problem. And that's what I was kind of thinking. During the Great Depression, FDR had created a committee to employ people who were, not able to find jobs. So is there a way that we can actually train the homeless people to do some work and things like that? Is that an idea that anybody could think of in our committee?
Sure, and just keeping in mind the time and the fact that it's not a specific topic that's agendized, I'll be really brief on this response and can follow up with you later as well. But on the homelessness specifically, we have a homelessness task force as well as a council committee on housing. So it's affordable housing because eventually you want people to, have jobs and have stable housing options, right? So kind of working towards that, and also be able to link them to all kinds of services, mental health services, other job training services that are provided. On the another part of it, you talked about training. We also have kind of a program focused on workforce development through our economic development office. And so that's another piece of it. So there's a lot of things that come together in terms of social services, job training, and then, actually supportive housing, right? And there's many partners, many nonprofits that work with us, but happy to follow up with you on that later if you're interested.
Any more questions or comments?
Just a quick question or comment. Is there any way we can get a breakdowns of what we have spent last year and what are we going to, what is our focus on this year and how are, so we can get an idea how much we can spend this year and what we cannot achieve last year and why. So it would be better for us to oversight the financials.
Included in the
Yeah,
agenda
I'm gonna throw that
report.
back to you, Lauren.
Yeah, included in the agenda report is a summary of the fiscal 21 $1.3 million. We summarize that the council used that to rebalance the budget during the pandemic, and they approved the overall rebalancing of the general fund in February of 16. So that's also available online as well and provided in this agenda packet. So you'll see in this agenda packet, we've attached a copy of the February 16th report for your reading. As for fiscal 22, that's the purpose of tonight's agenda report and also the summary of my presentation. These are the line items in that table before you. With all due respect, Chair, I just want to make sure we provide the public, members of the public, an opportunity to comment and bring it back to the floor. So I'm just being thoughtful that we're going to get our cameras turned off in 5 minutes.
Yes. So I don't think the committee has, somebody's raising their hand. Daniel?
Yeah, I just have one quick question. So at the end of this, Neil, do you put together, or do we put together a, yes, we agree with this, yes, we agree with this, no, we don't agree with this. We vote on it and send those recommendations in. I know we don't spend any money. We're simply making recommendations. But the formal recommendations we make, are they put together as a yes, no, and then Neil has his vote on it, or Neil puts it in, or how does that work?
So my understanding is that we will very quickly, I will ask for a motion, and our agenda item is to confirm the services recommended. Individual selection is not agendized. So we just have a yes or no vote on the recommendation. Excuse me. Are there any members of the public that wish to comment?
Actually, we have Jade, who has had her hand raised for quite a while. Oh, Jade, you're still on mute. Not yet. There you go.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I appreciate everybody's input. I heard them all, and I just want to urge my fellow committee member to really concentrate on this measure. Even the big projected income revenue for this measure, it doesn't go a long way with all the other stuff you want to do. And it's really what is important is to be able to the safety of our city, right? And the 911 emergency services, firefighters, they have needs and all that stuff. And I think those have to come first. And to add library hours, the most important thing for the, community. I mean,
sorry
people having for the whole land. A lot of services is under Clara Valley and the city. And I would.
Okay, sorry to interrupt, but we have hard time, listening because I guess your voice is breaking. Was it just me, or was it the same for everybody?
No, I think everybody had a hard time, and she's muted again.
Okay.
Comments from non-committee public members.
So we have 1 minute. Do you want to vote?
We do have one comment, one hand raised from the public. Irvish Moore.
Thank you very much to the Measure of Oversight Committee. I wanted to mention about the agenda reports and as well as the funding and the defunding of the budget, and as well as the anticipated earnings, spendings, and the investment with regards to the Measure of Community. It is important to know that, that how these funds are going to be utilized, how the revenues are going to be increased and decreased, what sales tax measures are increasing the revenue and having a decrease in the revenue, as well as how these revenues are being utilized by the city, where the investments are being made, whether that is being made to the bonds, whether that is being made to the money market, whether that is being made to the mutual fund. It is important that those decisions are being referred to the Measure of Oversight Committee, and also on a quarterly reports to know that what are the pitfalls in terms of a decrease and increase of the revenue that is being measured by the committee, as the committee is to decide as where the fundings are being utilized, where the fundings are being invested, and how these revenues are being utilized toward the right set of services that is established for the city. Also, it is imperative to know that when such financial reports are being made, the contribution that is being allotted to a specific service that is to be measured with respect to what fundings were available versus what fundings are going to be contributed. That is to be on every quarter, that is to be measured by the city as well. Those decisions are to be made by the committee as well. It is important to know that the general fund revenues, and as well as what are the different balancing that will be available to the committee as well, that is important to be included in the quarter report, as well as the committee is to decide that whether the remainder of the funding and the revenue increase and decrease is affecting the general funds, and how that is being utilized as well. Most importantly, when financial reports are being prepared, such increase and decrease are also being evaluated as a part of the funds that are available to the committee. However, it is important to know, it is more than ever important to know that what are the state bills, federal bills, state bills, and respective the local and the county jurisdiction that would be applicable by the county to the city, city to the county, state, and a federal that will be applicable to the applied to the remainder of the funding, and how that is being evaluated. That is to be managed by the committee as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comment. The chair will entertain a motion to confirm and accept the allowable expenditure consistent with Measure F as agended. Does anybody want to make a motion?
Motion to approve.
I'll second the motion.
Okay. Can we do this with a show of hands, or do we have to go?
We can just do a quick, just unmute yourself and do a quick aye.
Nay.
Hold on. Daniel?
Nay.
Is that a nay?
That's a no. Yeah.
No. Okay. Can we just go from yes to no, please? Harsh?
Yes.
Joyita?
Yes.
Neil?
No.
Nicholas?
Yes.
Siok? Or Jade? I think Jade might be frozen. Tanmay?
No.
Jade? Is it thumbs up or thumbs down? Thumbs up. Thank you.
Roseanne, can you please call the result of the vote, please?
We have 4 yays and 3 noes.
The motion would appear to carry then. Do we have any more agenda items?
We do. Chair, out of respect, there is a committee meeting that begins in 10 minutes, and due to the virtual setting, the city is only able to stream one meeting. So at this point, I respectfully ask that we adjourn this meeting. We will work through Roseanne to call our next meeting, if I may. All of you have been so diligent, asking great questions. And so, Mr. Chair, if we may at this point adjourn this evening's meeting so we can prepare for the next committee meeting.
My understanding of Robert's rules says a motion to adjourn is always in order. Do we have such a motion?
I motion to adjourn.
A second?
Yes.
Yes.
Are there any objections? None heard. Thank you very much for your time. Watch your email for the continuation of this meeting.
Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good evening.